Hello everyone and welcome. We're going to start this off by going to our documentation and going over our coding standards. So we'll go to help and go to documentation home. And we're going to scroll down to programming and scripting, programming with C++, and we're going to go to our coding standard. So basically, it goes over our class organization, copyright notice, naming conventions, and how everything is structured. And as you scroll down, it'll tell you what words you can use and what words you can't use. And it has a word list down here. And it also talks about portable code, use of standard libraries, comments, guidelines, constant correctness. And it's a lot of stuff to cover. So examining example formatting, modern language syntax, static assertion, override and final, null pointers, auto, range base for. A lot of stuff you won't understand if you're not familiar with C++. But as you learn and read through all of this stuff, it'll make a lot of sense to you. So you just want to go over this stuff and understand what it is you can and can't do. And it'll pretty much just walk you through how things should be structured and how it should be used, right? So you go over all of this stuff, you get an understanding of it because it's a lot to read. So this is why I'm showing you the documentation. It's a lot of stuff in here that you need to read and go over on your own personal time so you have an understanding of everything. So we're going to close this out and we're going to go to our documentation again. This time we're going to go to understanding the basics. Unreal Engine terminology is a page that you will use as a reference page. It pretty much explains how everything works from the ground level up. You can learn anything you pretty much want to learn about if you're not particularly versed in anything in Unreal Engine. And it explains to you how things work. What we're working on right now is our character. So you could use this as a reference. And for more information, see characters, setting up your character, and setting up character movement. So let's open up all three. And the first one is the characters. So it explains how skeletal mesh components work, actors, and animation system. And it also explains how collision and collisions with static meshes, your capsule component, and your character movement. In the second one is setting up your character. It explains how to create artist sets, import and export your character, creating player controllers, creating pawn or character blueprints, how to set up your character for movement, for the inputs and blueprints, animation blueprints, state machines, blend spaces, sequences, which is stuff is that we're going to get around to later on. But if you want to look at it now, you can get a little bit of understanding of how that works. So you won't be completely lost. But as you move downwards, you'll see world settings and so forth. And the third one, setting up the character movement, there's a lot more in this one. It's more in depth. And as you can see, for additional documentation for network replication and Unreal Engine, refer to networking overview, which is the next thing we're going to cover. But you just go through here and it explains how everything works, how you set up your character in the viewport, and in the character blueprint and how things work in there. And you'll see it just goes on and on and on. How to set up the movements in your blend spaces and your blueprint animation. So we're going to get around to all of this. We're going to get around to all of this. So yeah, you want to read through this if you're curious about stuff, but I'll explain everything as we're moving forward through this. But I just want you to see that there's a place you can come if you get lost. You can use as a reference. So you can see it shows you how to do everything to setting up the animations and the blend spaces, which is pretty cool. So you won't get lost. You won't get lost at all. So always use this as your reference. Okay?
Okay, the next thing we're going to go to is on the left side. So we just pan down a little bit and we're going to go to making interactive experiences. You can scroll up here. You can see it right here, making interactive experiences. Now in this particular page, we pretty much want everything here, but I want you to focus on these two in particular: game ability system and networking and multiplayer. The gameplay ability system uses different frameworks, from attributes to abilities to interaction, that an actor can own and trigger. It's gameplay driven and it's used in many projects such as role playing, RPGs, action adventures, multiplayer, such as Fortnite and other various multiplayer games made by Unreal Engine or made with Unreal Engine. As you scroll down, you'll see all the different things that you can click on, from gameplay abilities to how to set up interfaces, attributes and attribute sets, gameplay effects, to the blueprints to C++. As a couple of examples at the bottom, and you can click on these to explain everything else further. Okay. The next thing we want to click on is networking and multiplayer. This is what we're going to be using most of the time with setting up our multiplayer stuff. So you can get started with multiplayer programming, quick start, traveling in the multiplayer, which is traversing through your maps, detailed actor replication flow. This is something you want to look at. Actor and owning connections, actor roles. So pretty much everything down here all the way to the bottom is what you need to look at. The replay system, all of it. Just scroll down and so you see everything. And this is what we're going to use most of the time.
Now we want to close out our documentation. And now we want to go to our tools and open up our Visual Studios. If you already have your Visual Studios open, you don't need to do this. But if you don't, click this button right here. Once you're in your Visual Studios editor, open up your Metahuman RPG folder. In this folder, go to your source, then open up your Metahuman RPG folder again, and you'll see your character folder and open that up. In your character folder, I want you to open up your metabase character.h, metabase character.cpp, metamaze.cpp, metamaze.h, metawarrior.cpp, and metawarrior.h. So now open up your metabase.h, and I'm going to explain to you what each line of code does. The first line, pragma once, ensures the file is only included once by the compiler during the building process, preventing duplicate definitions. The second line, core minimum.h includes core Unreal Engine functionality like basic types, macros, and logging. The next line includes game framework / character.h. This header includes the A character class, which provides basic functionality for a game character, including movement, input, and physics. The next line, metabase character.generated.h. This line includes the A character class, which provides a basic functionality for a game character, including movements, inputs, and physics. The next line after this, the U class. This marks the class as an Unreal Engine class, allowing it to be used in blueprints and benefit from the engine's reflection system. We're going to get into that a little bit after this. The next line, class Metahuman RPG _ API, a metabase character, public a character. This is a constructor declaration, which is a function that is called when an object of the class is created and allows us to initialize values and set up components. The next line is generated body. It's a special command in Unreal Engine that automatically adds important code to your class, making it work smoothly with the engine. It also helps Unreal Engine understand your class so it can show it in the editor, work in the blueprints, handle things like memory and networking. But in short, it saves you from writing extra code and makes your class work better in Unreal Engine features. The next line, a meta-based character. This is a constructor declaration, which is a function that is called when the object of the class is created and allows us to initialize values and set up components. The next line, virtual, void, begin, play, override. We will break this down into 4 parts, starting with virtual. Virtual, this means that the tick function can be changed or overridden by other classes that inherit from this one. It allows flexibility for future changes. Void, this means the function doesn't return any information after it runs. Begin play. This is a special function in Unreal Engine. It's automatically called when your game starts or when an object is created. Think of it as your start button for your game, character, or object. Whenever your character appears in the game, begin play starts to setting things up. Override. This tells Unreal Engine you're changing the behavior of the begin play function in a specific way for this class. If the base character does something when the game starts, your warrior or mage can do something else by overriding the default behavior. For our next line, since we already covered virtual, void, and override, we will focus on tick float delta time. The tick function takes one piece of information, delta time. This delta time tells the function how much time has passed since the last frame, which helps with things like moving objects smoothly. With our next line, we will do the same as above and just focus on the setup player input component and the perimeter class uInput component pointed at player input component. Setup player input component is a function that binds player input actions to the functions within your character class. Example would be jumping, movement, and attacking. Class uInput component pointed at player input component is part of the perimeter that defines the function. Class uInput component pointed specifies that the perimeter is a pointer to an object of the type uInput component. UInput component is a class that handles input bindings in Unreal Engine. Player input component is the name of your parameter. This parameter will refer to the UInput component object that you can use to bind the input actions and accesses to your movement or abilities. Now we're going to talk about our reflection system, garbage collector. First thing we want to do is go back to our Unreal Engine editor and go to help and go to our documentation home. And scroll down to our programming and scripting, and programming with C++. And we want to scroll down again, and it'll be the first one, Unreal Engine Reflection System. Here's where you can read about the reflection system, aka the garbage collector. And it'll tell you about all the classes and how they work and what their purpose is. But what I'm going to cover right now is UFunction and UProperty, as well as UClass. But you can go through all of this and get information if you want to follow up on that. UClass is used to declare a class as UObject derived and exposes it to Unreal's reflection system. It makes the class recognizable by various engine systems such as garbage collector, serialization, blueprints, and more. UClass macro must be placed before a class that inherits from UObject or any of its subclasses like aActor. The generated body macro must be inside the class body to generate reflection data. A UClass can have various specifiers or keywords within parentheses, such as blueprintable, which allows the class to be extended in blueprints. Not blueprintable prevents the class from being extended in blueprints. And blueprint type, which allows the class to be used as a variable type in blueprints. UProperty is used to expose member variables or properties to the Unreal Engine reflection system, which enables them to be modified in the editor, sterilized, saved, and used in blueprints. This also helps the garbage collector track references to objects. UProperty macro goes before a member variable decoration. Properties without UProperty won't be visible in the editor or available for blueprint access. Specifiers in the parentheses control how the property behaves. Edit anywhere. The property can be edited anywhere, including in the details panel of the Unreal Editor. Blueprint read-write. The property is accessible for both reading and writing in blueprints. Category equals hyphen my variables. Hyphen organizes the properties in the category for easier access in the editor. Other common properties specifiers. Visible anywhere. The property is visible but not editable in the editor. Edit defaults only can only be edited in the class defaults, not on the individual instances. Transient property won't be saved when the game or level is serialized. Replicated marks the property to be replicated across the network. UFunction is used to expose class methods or functions to Unreal Reflection System, enabling them to be called from blueprints, bound to events, or used in networking or RPCs. The UFunction macro goes before a function declaration. Functions without UFunction won't be visible to blueprints, multiplayer networking, or other engine systems. Specifiers that control how the function behaves. Blueprint callable. This function can be called from blueprints. Blueprint implementable event. This declares that blueprints can implement the function body. Server, client, net multicast. These control how the function behaves in a network multiplayer. Remote procedures calls or RPCs. Other common function specifiers. Blueprint pure. This function doesn't modify the state of the object and can be used in blueprint expressions. Execute allows the function to be called from the in-game console. Reliable and unreliable. For networking controls, how the function is sent over the network. Reliable guarantees delivery. Unreliable does not. So to summarize, I will put up my toolets so you can see and read it for yourself. Now we're going to talk about creating definitions, peeking definitions, and going to definitions. If you look at the Metabase character, CPP, or source file, you will see that there's a variable for each of the defined variables in our header file. Each of these is defined. Okay. Now we're going to talk about creating definitions, peeking definitions, and going to definitions. If you look at on your Now we're going to talk about creating definitions, peeking definitions, and going to definitions. If you look on your Metabase character, CPP, or source file, you will see that there's a variable for each of the defined variables in our header file. Inside of each of these is a definition called super. They simply call the parent class of each of these definitions. You can right click these and pick the definition or go to the definition page, and on these pages you can see the hierarchy of the words that you are defining. For instance, let's go back to our header file and right click on a character and pick its definition. You can see that it is a child of a pawn, and we can right click and pick a pawn, and you can see that a pawn is a child of a actor. Now let's pick a actor, and it's a child of u object. Now let's go to the definition this time. This takes you to a page, and you can see the u object is a child of u object based utility. Let's scroll up, This shows you everything associated with whatever word you're trying to define. You can also scroll down and see other definitions. Now go back to your Unreal Engine editor and find your Metahuman folder. Now right click your Metahuman blueprint and click on Preview Equivalent C++ Header. And in here, you can see all your header files for your Metahuman. And you can close this out. Now open up your blueprint. Go to Viewport. And to your left, you can see all of the stuff that you need for your Metahuman. All the way down to the LOD sync, which is a level of detail. And if you look down here, you can see your functions, your event graph, your macros, variables, and event dispatch. And if you click on these, you see it'll take you to code. And you can also peek the definition of these. But you see it'll take you to code for that. Now, go back up to your body and right click and open up skeletal mesh component.h. And you can see it has uObject and object macros. And following our code standard, all classes that are uObject derived will have a U before it. So our class is uSkeletal Mesh Component. So we want to close this out. Now I want you to go down to your eyelashes on your face. And I want you to right click and open Groom component. And in here, you can see that it's called uGroom component. Now I want you to close this out. Now go to Help and Documentation Home. And we want to go to our search bar and we want to type in use skeletal mesh. Component. And click the use skeletal mesh component. And scroll down to references. And you can see on the header, it shows you how to navigate to the skeletal mesh in your Visual Studios. And this is the include that we need to put into our source file or our CPP file. So the next thing we want to do is search uGroom component. And once you click on uGroom component, and as you can see in the header, it gives you the same information. And we need this include for our source file / CPP file. And if you scroll down, you'll see our TObject pointer. Click on this. Now in the remarks, it explains you how this is used. And I want you to read this and then we'll continue. Now let's go back to our Visual Studios and close this out. For our meta-based characters, since it's shared with our other classes, we don't want to put our Metahuman code here. We only want to put it in our Meta Mage and our Meta Warrior. So what I want to do is I'm going to copy the code, and then you can copy the code yourself, and we'll proceed from there. So now this is what I want you to copy into your metawarrior.h. Just copy all of this. And in your metawarrior.cpp or your source file, I want you to copy everything that you see right here. Then I want you to build your project. If you need time, just pause it. Now run your project by clicking on this. Start without debugging. Now once you're in, I want you to scroll all the way down until you get to your C++ classes. And go to your character folder. And find your Meta Warrior and your Meta Mage. Well, actually, what we'll do first is we'll create a new folder in our content. And we'll call this new folder underscore Metahuman RPG. And we'll set a color for red so it'll stand out. And we'll create a folder named maps. And we'll create a folder named characters. And a folder called game framework. Game framework. Now, go back down to your C++ classes. Go to your character. And on your Meta Warrior, create a blueprint class. And we're going to name this Meta Warrior underscore BP. And we're going to put it in our characters folder. Now in our body, I want you to click on skeletal mesh to set and type in body. And it'll tell you at the top what is the male or female character that you want. And this MTAL and RW body is the one that I want. And then in the location, type in -90. In the rotation, type in -90. And now click on your face. And search. Well, you can search whatever name you gave your character, search that name. And it'll say your character's name with the face. Click that. Now compile this. Now we need to go back to our content folder and navigate to our Metahumans folder. And we need to open up the BP for it. And for this, we need this hair, and we need to copy it to our BP that we just currently made. So click on eyelashes and hold down shift and click on beard. Now click copy and go back to your Meta Warrior BP and just copy paste. Now drag this down to your face and compile. Now go back to your C++ classes. Go to your character, create a blueprint for your MetaMage. Put this in your character folder. And we'll name this MetaMage BP. And we'll go to our C++ classes again. This time we're going to go to our game framework, and we're going to make a blueprint of our metagame mode base. And we're going to underscore this and put BP at the end, and put this in our game framework folder. And for our player controller, well, we haven't made our player controller BP yet, but for our player, our default spawn class, we'll put our Meta Warrior BP for the time being until we get our character selection screen made. And that should be it. So you can drag your character, or you can just play. I don't know if you can see your character. No, it's not. You haven't set the world settings yet. So in your world settings over here, for the game mode, you want to put your Metahuman game mode. So your meta game mode base, put that. And you click play. And you see you're within your character because we haven't made our camera room yet. But if you go to your Metahuman RPG folder and click on your character and drag it in, I don't know why it's in the world, but you can pull it up. And you can see that your character is constructed. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like and subscribe button. And if you would like to join my community, you can do so by joining communities.unrealengine.com/Memphis. See you guys next time.